With over 4,500 episodes across 55 years, there are bound to be some strange Sesame Street plotlines out there. From the time the Count hosted a radio music countdown show, to the time that Hooper's store was put on lockdown with Cookie Monster trapped inside, take your pick, there are plenty of weird Sesame Street episodes. In this new series, Episode Insanity, my goal is to break down some of the strangest episodes of Muppet shows that I could find and talk about what makes them so weird and what makes them so special. To begin, for the first ever episode, I'd like to talk about Sesame Street, episode 3217. The episode where Biff the construction worker gets a bowling ball stuck to his hand and needs it surgically removed. Hello everybody, and welcome back to Mupptown Funk. I'm your host Ty, and let's begin here. This episode has been on my mind for a very long time. A few years ago, I got into this habit of binge-watching 90s Sesame Street episodes. I was born in 2004, so most 90s stuff I saw from Sesame Street was late 90s. I never really saw early 90s stuff, and it was really interesting to visit this era of the show. One thing I didn't expect from 90s Sesame Street is just how often Biff was a significant character. Biff, for those of you who don't know, is a construction worker on Sesame Street who's typically paired with his silent construction partner Sully, and hijinks ensue as the two of them interact and try to work things out together. Biff is kind of dim-witted and emotionally immature, something that his episode plotlines really heavily focus on. In fact, these Biff-centric episodes provide pretty interesting storylines and morals for Sesame Street, as Biff is one of very few Muppet characters that are adults within the canon of the series. Biff is often presented in more adult-oriented situations, but his emotional immaturity causes him to react in a similar way a child might, allowing Sesame Street to still make this character resonate with children and their parents very easily. One episode, for example, features Biff turning 40 and being upset because he's getting older. While this is something a lot of us feel as we get older, Biff's reaction to this is somewhat over the top and immature, allowing the show to properly teach that it's okay to feel sad that you're getting older, but you should appreciate the life that you live and be able to celebrate it. And while feeling like you're getting old and having a bowling ball stuck to your hand are certainly two very different issues, the bowling ball hand episode ends up being a pretty beautiful character study on Biff and the concept of learning how to let go of things and how not to be afraid. So let's get into it. This is episode 3217 from season 25, first airing March 15th, 1994. These street scenes would later be reused in season 27's episode 3502 in 1996. We start with Biff arriving at Hooper's store, where Telly and Mr. Hanford are. Biff requests a sandwich, and then places his other hand on the counter, revealing that there is a bowling ball stuck to it. Mr. Hanford and Telly are both shocked. "Biff, is that your bowling ball?" they ask, and Biff of course says yes, that's his bowling ball. His thumb got stuck in one of the holes of the bowling ball, and for whatever reason, Telly and Mr. Hanford do not ask how this happened. They just ask if he's gonna get it removed. Biff says no. In fact, he's happy there's a bowling ball stuck to his hand. He talks about how happy he is to have the bowling ball here, how he'll be able to see it all the time, always keep watch over it. He's very clearly in denial.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have my bowling ball stuck on my thumb. My bowling ball.
In fact, before the end of the scene, you could start to see it settle in that Biff is very clearly afraid of having a bowling ball removed from his hand, but we don't know why. You know what else we don't know? We don't know how this happened. Telly and Mr. Hanford never at any point ask him how this happened. I desperately need to see a prequel to this episode where Biff and Sully are out bowling, and Biff horrendously gets his thumb stuck in the hole of the bowling ball, and the night is ruined. Oh, and in case you were wondering, Sully is not in this episode at all. He's not even in the one where it's Biff's birthday. Where was he? Biff claims that he doesn't need the bowling ball removed from his hand because he could still do anything with it on. For example, scratch his nose, which goes as terribly as you would expect. Then we cut for some sketches and come back. And as much as I love Sesame Street sketches, I think the best way to do these episodes would be to just recap the plot without talking about the sketches, since they don't have any relevance to the plot. I hope you guys are okay with that. If you'd like to see me cover some of the sketches in the future, maybe I could do like a notable sketches introduced in this episode segment. Let me know in the comments. Anyway, back to the plot at hand. Hand with a bowling ball stuck to it. That pun was not intended, but I'm real proud of it now. In the next scene, we see Biff attempt to eat his sandwich. As you'd expect, Biff, who now has a bandage on his nose from his previous incident, simply can't do this, though he refuses to admit that.
It's highly skilled.
It's also highly impossible.
Telly eventually suggests that Biff drink the milk through a straw, and Biff thinks this is a great idea. Now that he doesn't need to use two hands to eat and drink, he can use the bowling ball hand to do anything else, like swat a fly. This leads to him hitting himself in the nose again. This is now the third time in about 4 minutes of street scenes. In the next scene, we see Biff play the piano with both hands. And while it does sound awful,
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, a.
Biff was never the strongest piano player. Telly is covering his ears the entire time. This is easily my favorite scene of the episode, by far the funniest part. Unfortunately, at the end, Biff breaks the piano in half, once again prompting Telly and Mr. Hanford to tell him to get it removed. But in the next scene, Biff thinks he finally has backup when his wife appears. This is Celeste, a school crossing guard and Biff's wife, making her only physical appearance in the series.
Show him what you do, Celeste.
Okay. Stop!
While Biff thinks Celeste will have his side, she too immediately tells him to take the bowling ball off of his hand. He can't do anything with it on, backed up by Telly and Mr. Hanford, who go over all of the things that Biff has messed up now that there's been a bowling ball in his hand. She even offers to call Dr. Edwin, who Biff is very clearly afraid of.
Who's Dr. Edwin?
He takes bowling balls off your hand.
Biff's fear of the doctor is what I was talking about earlier on in the video when I said that Biff is used very well to describe issues a child might have despite being an adult character. A lot of kids are afraid of the doctor, and despite the fact that Biff is married and has a job as a construction worker, he too is still afraid of the doctor. Which honestly is a really good way of showing kids, hey, it's okay to be scared even if you're an adult. Except Biff reacts in a very childish way, thus allowing us to be taught that that's not the right way to react, right? See, it all comes together. Biff finally breaks down and confesses that he's afraid of the doctor. His wife consoles him, but also tells Biff that if he doesn't get the bowling ball removed, he'll never be able to hold her hand again. And this is what finally changes Biff's mind. In the next scene, we see Dr. Edwin, who has a stethoscope up to the bowling ball, and tells Biff that he'll have to perform a bowlectomy. Yes, really, that's what it's called.
The operation I'm about to perform on you is called a bowlectomy.
I can't believe they actually called it that. That's incredible. Biff is afraid that this will hurt, but Dr. Edwin tells him that he's done this procedure thousands of times.
Well, I've done this same surgical procedure thousands of times, here and in Vienna.
It's once again reiterated that he is a specialist in this field, and I love the fact that this is just a frequent issue here in the world of Sesame Street. People are always getting their hands stuck in bowling balls. I guess that the bowling balls aren't built for their larger puppet hands, and that's what causes this issue. Edwin tells Biff that the two of them will have to cooperate. When he pulls, Biff has to pull too. And it's at this point I was once again reminded of just how great Sesame Street always does at combining several different lessons into one episode. In this episode alone, we've had fear of going to the doctor and why going there is important. We've had cooperation, and we also had how a scientific experiment works in the piano scene of all places when they do an experiment and explain that process by talking about how there will be a difference between when Biff played the piano with and without the ball. The Sesame Street writers have always been so good at making sure they're teaching several things and teaching anything whenever they can. And so Edwin and Biff start to try to pull the bowling ball off of his finger. The bowlectomy officially begins, and they don't even have to put Biff under anesthesia before it. The ball has been removed from Biff's hand, but there's a new problem.
Thanks, Doc. I want to shake your hand.
Yes, what? Oh no! Oh no!
Do you think this episode gave any kids irrational fears of going bowling? In the next scene, we end on a musical number with Biff and his wife singing about holding each other's hands. Afterwards, they decide to go off together and go bowling. The punchline is exactly what you would expect.
Now we gotta go see Dr. Edwin.
Again?
Yeah, again. He wanted to go bowling.
Didn't we literally just do this exact same punchline with Dr. Edwin? Why are we doing it again, guys? And with that, we come to the end of this episode of Sesame Street. A pretty funny one with a ridiculous out there concept that's really a testament of how well Sesame Street can teach different concepts. The concept of getting a bowling ball stuck to your hand is a silly out there idea, but it's a great stand-in for actual medical procedures or injuries that kids may get. Biff is clearly meant to be a subversion of the stereotypical construction worker. Yeah, sure, he's this big, tough guy, but he's also afraid of going to the doctor. And if he can do it, so can you. So can all of us. So if you ever get a bowling ball stuck to your hand, I have a great doctor you could call. He really specializes in bowlectomies. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching this episode of Episode Insanity. Let me know what other weird Sesame Street or Muppet episodes you'd like me to talk about in the future. I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.